Hello and welcome to Roundtable. With the coldest couple of months of the winter probably still to come, Europe's gas supplies are running dangerously low. And things could get worse should Russia invade Ukraine. If that happens, does Europe have the stomach to impose sanctions on Moscow in the knowledge that supplies could be cut further in retaliation? Very good to have your company. I'm David Foster. More cuts from Moscow, higher bills for consumers. Yet Europe's energy crisis is partly of its own making. A failure to replenish gas stocks after a cold winter last year. A rush to green technology and that over-reliance on Russia. Moscow is now the biggest gas supplier to Europe, and it's capped the supplies of gas that run through Ukraine, in the hope of getting approval for the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That is, the pipeline which connects Russia's gas-rich fields to Germany. Now have a look at this chart compiled by Bloomberg. It shows that gas prices have quadrupled over the last year. And the blue line running along the bottom, very straight, shows the average price of gas from 2016 to 2020. Compare that with what's happened in the last 12 months. Now, according to the analysts at Wood Mackenzie, Europe's storage sites are only 56% full. That is down about 1/6 on a 10-year average. And levels will be even lower by the end of March, making them the most depleted ever. That's even if we don't have an extremely cold winter and Russia continues to deliver gas at current levels. Well, there are predictions that Europe's gas crisis is here to stay until 2025. A lot of pain for consumers and businesses at a time when inflation appears to be on the rise. Let's bring in our panel from Dubai. That's in the United Arab Emirates. We have Wael Makarem, Senior Market Strategist. From Oxford in the UK, Samuel Ramani, Researcher in International Relations at the University of Oxford. And in Berlin, Thomas O'Donnell, Geopolitics Analyst at the Hertie School of Governance. Great to have you on the programme. Wael for the first time. Samuel and Thomas once again. Let me come to you, Thomas, first of all. It's not just Russia being mean, if you like. It's not just Europe's ineptitude in failing to store enough gas. There are other factors at play here, and I'm thinking China.
China is at the play, and I should say something that affects all of the countries that you've named is objective factors. Last year, having a very cold winter, low wind, created the objective technical factors. But China has made a decision to change to as much as possible to natural gas from coal, especially because of pollution and the difficulties, the protests this creates in China, the dirty cities. However, it's a tremendous market for gas. They're buying up gas like crazy for the last few years. That's not going to stop. And so if Europe needs LNG, liquid natural gas, which is mostly what China is, the additional buying in China, they have to compete for it price-wise with China and other parts of Asia. And this is the first time in history that the price of LNG in Europe came anywhere near the price of Asia. It's actually higher now.
Not just China, but Japan, I read as well, both expanding after the pandemic quicker or more quickly than European countries.
There's also there's also, insofar as there's recovery from COVID, there's tremendous demand, of course. What I'm talking about is over time, you'll see a much higher percentage of natural gas in China as the percentage of coal hopefully goes down, but the percentage of natural gas certainly goes up. That's why Beijing, you can see the blue sky once in a while now. You never could before. They're replacing coal with natural gas. And there's going to be a constant opportunity for Mr. Putin, for example, to sell his gas there in Asia instead of to Europe if he has disagreements with Europe. This is a serious problem from Europe from many sides.
Okay, well, we're going to go into the reasons why Russia has an issue with Europe and Europe has an issue with Russia in just a moment. What warnings there that China's going to take even more LNG out of the markets? Does that mean the prices are going to continue to rise inexorably?
Yeah, if we just have a look at China's recent action where President Xi actually announced that they need to move from coal to natural gas, and this added more demand into the market. And especially that we're at a time where also we have some tight supplies around the world. So this is just creating further momentum in the upward movement. And it's not only about natural gas. We've seen most of the commodities or energy commodities, they were higher last year. If you look just at the NYMEX or Brent, they're close to 90 levels, highest in almost 7 years. So we're talking about the general higher costs for energy commodities, and especially since China led the recovery post-COVID, so it was among the top economies to recover from COVID. We witnessed a high level of manufacturing in the country, and they were exporting heavily towards the world. And this definitely would need more electricity and more energy. And this went to at a time where the government chose to diverge from coal facilities into a better, lower emission natural gas sources.
How much did Europe get it wrong? Because I'm reading that the UK, for example, has such low levels of gas storage. Less than 1% of Europe's stored gas is in the UK. It's in a hopeless position. That the other European countries have such fragmented energy policies, they can't all agree on anything as it happens. Was Europe completely caught out by this?
We've seen that Europe is in a bit of a better situation slightly from the United Kingdom, since in UK they just moved fastly to lower their coal facilities at the time they even stopped, and this put them in tough situations. We're seeing even top energy producers, like 29 energy producers, they went out of business since last year. So this is a bit more scary in the United Kingdom relative to Europe. However, if we just look at the longer term a little bit, Europe is coming to a tougher situation during the next months, the 3 months to come. So if definitely this crisis, or at least higher energy prices, they don't come back into their place and they reach some sort of agreement maybe with some of their suppliers.
Why don't we take a look at where Europe does get its gas from? 80%, 8/10 from Russia, Norway and Algeria. Russia supplying almost a third of Europe's gas via pipelines through Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, Turkey, and crucially, Germany, which imports 90% of its gas, gets 40% via the Nord Stream pipeline. That's the original pipeline, the controversial Nord Stream 2, parallel to that, yet to be certified. Samuel, I'm reading that Gazprom was asked quite a long time ago, that's the Russian gas supply. It was asked some time ago to increase the amount of gas it sells to Europe, and before the crisis in Ukraine escalated, it said no. Why was that?
Well, the Russians have been basically trying to play pipeline diplomacy and games with regards to gas sales for quite a while. And we've seen that most immediately happen in this immediate neighborhood. They had a very similar kind of dispute with Moldova recently over gas sales, where they were not really willing to reach the supplies that they were asked for, and they recalled up to $1 billion in debt. They did something similar with regards to Poland and other East European countries, and then Europe more broadly. And now it appears as if the crisis is just getting worse because of the Ukraine situation. There was an initial report coming through that showed the Yamal pipeline, for example, is not scheduling more exports of gas in February. And since January 19, there's also been some disruptions of gas supplies across the Polish-Ukrainian border. When the first half of the month, things are moving as regular. So there's been this has been a tool of geopolitical leverage from the Russian side, and the Europeans have acknowledged that, as well as the International Energy Agency.
But can I just come in here?
Engaging a gas war with Europe.
Yeah, if the Russians are using gas for political leverage because they want Nord Stream 2 to be given the all clear, even though it's physically finished, it hasn't been written into European contracts yet. If they're trying to get leverage from it and it still hasn't got approval, and we're at this position, has it failed in what it's been trying to do?
Well, it's succeeded in a narrow sense because it's been able to kind of use this as a tool of leverage inside republics that are very close to its borders. And the Moldovans had to come back, make a deal, but they didn't compromise in Transnistria. So even there, they weren't able to achieve much. On the bigger issue of Nord Stream 2, they've also largely failed because the Germans have not entirely ruled it out in spite of 3 years of U.S. pressure, but they're also not taking steps towards moving it. And even though they're not willing to sell defensive weapons to Ukraine or support aggressive containment against Russia, they are calling for prudent sanctions and they are potentially considering dropping it. So I think in terms of Nord Stream 2 and in terms of the use of energy as a tool of hegemony in their near abroad, the Russians have largely failed.
But Thomas, you believe that Putin doesn't really need Nord Stream 2 to do what he wants to do. It's Ukraine he's really after.
Yeah, at this point, let me clarify. If you look at the big picture, the strategic picture for Mr. Putin, as you said, they supply about 40% of the gas that Europe imports. It's just Europe really needs this. 80% of it used to go through Ukraine. Meanwhile, as we all know, Mr. Putin would like to reincorporate Ukraine into the old Soviet Union, or at least prevent it from going to the West and to NATO. He knew 20 years ago and more that as long as Gazprom has this dependence of putting the gas through Ukraine to its market in Europe, and its almost only market externally at that time was Europe, he couldn't put pressure on Ukraine. So he's had a 20-year project of building detour pipelines in cooperation with Germany around the north, Nord Stream 1, in cooperation with other countries around the south, Turk Stream across the Black Sea. Now, he's gotten to a point where people were assuming he needed Nord Stream 2 to finish this project. But if I step back and looked at it, and it turns out that he's got so much new gas that he is able to flow to Eurasia. A pipeline to Pakistan is coming. A second pipeline to China is coming. Plus so much LNG that he can export from the Arctic region. He doesn't have the same dependence on Europe going forward. And he's got $600 billion in the bank, okay? And he can do without not only Nord Stream 2, he can do without the rump gas he still sends across Ukraine. He is risking that. Both of those, the United States will see to it, I'm almost certain, that both of those are cut off permanently if he invades Ukraine. He's now willing to sacrifice those things. He's sufficiently diversified himself away with detour pipelines and other customers such as China, Pakistan, and so forth, and LNG. He's ready for this confrontation he has set up.
Okay, well, let me come to you, since you follow the markets and the way that oil has moved around the world extremely closely. If, as Thomas suggests, Putin has enough room in the middle, in the Far East, to be able to sell his gas, if those other pipelines are cut off, where would Europe get its supplies from?
Well, there were some talks of possibility that the United States could be just providing some gas, and even Canada, also from Qatar. However, if we just look at the ease of access, the ease of access to the Russian gas, it's not found in any other of the solutions. Also, there is now the current solution that's being taken into consideration is the Groningen gas field. So earlier, if we just look 5 years ago, it was just producing around 30 billion cubic meter. If we just look at the current production, it's around 3.9 billion. And now they just promised to raise it a little bit towards 7.6, but the government just took the decision to stop producing this from mid-2022. So we have a short-term solution, which could be the Groningen supply. However, it's not durable. It's not for the longer term. However, it could help a little bit to ease the situation as we pass to the coming 2-3 months, which could be the toughest.
Okay.
Since we know that going through April, this could be just a little bit easing with better weather conditions.
Thomas, I will come to you in just a moment. I see you're eager to say something, but I think I owe Samuel another chance in just a second. But Wael, you mentioned Qatar there. I've also read that Qatar is now supplying more gas to the Far East than it used to, so that might not be such a readily available market as before. So what I'm wondering is, have countries such as Germany, in shutting down its nuclear reactors, come to regret an action that it's taken? Have countries such as the UK come to regret their accelerated move towards greener energy sources, when in fact what they should have done is realize that for the time being they needed to keep these supplies in the bank?
Well, I think that these countries could come to regret that. Obviously, there has been a push, at least from the European Union side, to invest much more heavily in nuclear energy to maintain energy demands. Actually, there was a report, I think, from the EU Internal Market Commissioner, Thierry Breton, earlier this month that said that the Europeans are probably going to have to invest up to 500 billion euros in nuclear energy.
Germany's shutting all of its reactors. Germany's shutting its all. France is increasing its production, but Germany might have something to regret here. We've done something
Germany has something to regret. Yeah, exactly. That's going against what the Europeans have demanded over here. And also, the French are going to be increasing it. And these squabbling over like whether green classifications exist for nuclear energy and natural gas between the Germans, the Austrians, and the French and the Czechs is not necessarily very viable either. But I think they will come to regret this.
Okay, well, tell me a little bit about where we go from here. Because I've got this quote from Amrita Sen, Energy Aspects, and she says, I'll paraphrase, there are going to be large-scale power cuts, governments will have to introduce them, and rationing to certain sectors to curb gas demand materially this winter. Is it going to have to come to that? We'll go around all of you on that one, but Samuel, since you're talking, carry on.
Well, I think that it's there's obviously going to be a grave risk of power cuts and problems like this happening over the course of the next while. Obviously, much depends on what's going on with the broader geopolitical situation. For example, if there is a war between Russia and Ukraine, this would lead to more disruptions on the Yamal pipeline route, more disruptions on Nord Stream routes, and now without nuclear energy as a buffer, there's going to be a bit of a problem. The Americans and the Qataris have actually been holding clandestine talks that came more public 3 days ago about potentially reorienting Qatari gas towards Europe, but that doesn't seem to be anything that's that viable. When I look at the Russian media, they're not really viewing that as a serious threat to Nord Stream 2 either. So I think that they're in a bit of a pickle right now.
Okay, Thomas, on that one?
Here, a sort of fundamental big picture thing here. Yes, Europe did get itself in a lot of trouble. Europe, a significant section of Europe, I would say, has an ideological problem. Just like the Greens in Germany are pacifists, they're also somehow renewable fundamentalists. And there's a lot of this thinking, sort of magical, technological thinking, where renewables is going to replace everything and free us from fossil fuels. So even in England, because they have a lot of offshore wind, they closed almost all of their storage for natural gas. They were lucky they had 4 or 5 windy years, and now they're suffering when they don't. And similar things in Germany. Closing the nuclear plants is an ideological problem. I don't know how else to explain it. It's irrational. Now, the problem is Europe needs this natural gas that it gets from Russia. It's got to get it somewhere. This month, it's received 2.5 times as much gas in the form of LNG from the Americans as it received from pipelines from Russia. No one would have ever believed this if you said this before.
And can Russia, and can the USA, will the USA continue to be as generous?
If they're willing to, if Europe is willing, okay. So Asia was paying 5 times more than the cost of shipping LNG from the USA, from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why they were always getting it. Then Europe decided to pay 8 times more, 8 times more. If they pay that much, that's what's going to happen. The Americans have warned them about this for a long time. Overdependence on Russia. You should have paid a little more money earlier for security and been importing LNG, have more storage. Don't move these pipelines out of Ukraine, etc. There's a number of these things. They've warned them. They've warned them there could be an energy crisis, and exactly what happened.
And Wael, you were nodding just then as though you wanted to say something either in agreement with Thomas or you had something else to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was in agreement on something that just moving from solid energy sources to energy sources that are intermittent or unstable at a time, this is a big risk. And especially that it came at a time where we are in total uncertainty around the world. We're coming out of COVID, and apparently the recovery is so strong, and there is huge investments, huge money flow was pumped by central banks, by governments into the markets during the past 2 years. This encouraged more investments. If we look at the consumption of electricity and energy, it was also significantly higher last year. So the time that Germany, for example, chose to take such a decision isn't very accurate. Maybe if they could have waited a little bit or pushed it a little bit, this could be better. Like now we're hearing also from Électricité de France, also their nuclear reactors, they're even producing less electricity. So this is coming as a cherry on top. So all this, it's about the timing. Definitely the transition has to happen. But when we're in a broader amount of input from renewable sources, we're in a better situation. We're currently in the first stages of the transition where we have many risks that we have to take into consideration.
Talking about timing, I'm thinking that economies are weak at the moment. Some of them are getting stronger post-pandemic, if you want to say that is where we are now. And I'm thinking that Amrita Sen's warning about power cuts and rationing might not be so blindingly likely if countries were in a stronger position financially, but they're not. Do you think, therefore, that her warning is actually likely to be something that we see, that the lights are going to go out in the streets of Britain, that we're going to be told that we can only open our fridge 4 times a day and take 1 pack of sausages out instead of 20? I mean, I don't know.
Unfortunately, this could come maybe, but in a just lesser way than people could just exaggerate a little bit about it. Definitely, like if we notice what happened 2-3 months ago, most of the, like for example in China, they were forcing factories to go off work in order to just try to save some energy. It happened also in Spain. So definitely they have to be more efficient on energy consumption, and this could be a little bit of an exit. However, what could be a little bit stressful for the fiscal year of 2022, if we continue to see higher energy prices, higher natural gas prices going through April towards June, where governments start to build their storages, this could even make it a little bit worse for spending for the definitely European governments.
Samuel, going back almost 50 years, I hate to say it, as a young reporter, I was covering the oil crisis in the early 1970s. And in the UK, at least, we saw that followed by a number of years of social disruption, ending in the winter of discontent in 78, 79. It was a massive period of upheaval. If this situation continues, is that likely to be mirrored?
Well, I think that's too early to tell whether that could be mirrored, but certainly there's a lot of panicking, there's a lot of movement inside the UK that's suggesting that there could be some problems. I mean, there's already people turning towards fuel rations. There's reports about increased numbers of people, especially in the lower 1/3 income brackets, turning off their fridges and freezers during this period, and the costs of energy are spiraling. So there's a lot of immediate problems, but it's too early to tell whether we'll get that serious.
But in terms of the cycles of history, I don't know whether you want to say that these things do follow a particular pattern, or, as you say already, it's too soon to tell. What are your fears?
So obviously, I think if there is a continued disruption between Russia and Ukraine, if the movement of gas doesn't go through and storage remains low, and there isn't compensation from the Qataris or the Americans or others on this energy shortage, combined with the fact that there are other issues like dealing with truckers and transport and infrastructure and other problems in the United Kingdom, I think that the risk of a crisis remains high, but it's still too early to go back so far to say it's a complete recycle of history.
Okay, Thomas.
Mr. Putin said, after they decided finally to build Nord Stream 2, I can divide Europe on energy. Watch me. It was a quote. The Europeans should have learned, in my opinion, and the Americans, I have to say, Democrats, Republicans warned them. 2006, he cut off the gas through Ukraine. 2009, he cut off the gas through Ukraine. He invaded the country, and 2014-15, he cut off the gas again. Obama insisted that the G7 insisted that Europe have a stress test for gas. What would you do if there is a 3-month and a 6-month cutoff by Russia? What would you do? And they made a stress test, and they said solidarity was the answer. The reality is they should have been building storage.
Okay, but what about the consequences of that making Ukraine at this particular moment the central banker for gas? Russia invades Ukraine. All the gas supplies have gone.
Yes. Of course, this would be good for the Ukrainians. They have the storage, and then they would be important to countries like Germany, who maybe would be willing to defend them instead of now defending Nord Stream 2. I mean, you can see where this is going, right? But the point is, Germany has made these decisions. The real problem now is this asymmetry I was talking about. Putin has other outlets for his gas. He has a lot of money in the bank. The European market is less important to him for natural gas, okay? That gas is more important to Europe than it was before because of the renewables that are unreliable, because they're closing nuclear plants, because they're closing coal plants without storage. He's in the catbird seat, as we say in the United States.
Okay,
they've allowed him to weaponize, they've offered him the ability to weaponize gas, and you see him doing it right now.
You guys make me go cold not from a heating point of view, but simply because I'm rather worried about what I'm hearing. Wael, final word to you, because we're running out of time. Keep it short if you don't mind. When's this going to end? How's it going to end?
Apparently, there's a bit more uncertainty because all this crisis around prices and inflation is just related to COVID. And unfortunately, like, no one was able to at least just decide when COVID is going to go away. And we're just learning how to deal with it. And as long as we're trying to get more with the habits of living COVID, I believe like in the coming second half in 2022, this could ease a little bit when we have lesser impact on supply chains, when life is getting back a little bit to more of a normality. This could be a little bit of less pressure.
Okay.
However,
let us hope. Keep your howevers. You were cheering me up a little bit. Thank you very much indeed. Great to have you all on the program. Wow, nice to meet you for the first time. Samuel Thomas, great to have you back on Roundtable. From me, David Foster. Thank you for watching this edition of our program. I hope to have your company next time. Until then, goodbye.